Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right, happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman, Dr. Scott Bradley, freedomsrisingsun.com on your radio. This is the broadcast for March 7th in the year of our Lord 2025. Promoting God, family, country, protecting life, liberty, and property, and doing so in the traditions of our founding fathers. We reject revolution unless it's a Jesus revolution, and then we're in because we follow the Prince of Peace. Dr. Scott Bradley's with me, ladies and gentlemen. Last hour, I went kind of on a rant, highlighting this reality that they are attacking RFK Jr., I believe wrongfully. Every single article is negative. We need these organizations in the Trump administration, departments, organizations, whatever you want to call them, and we need to tell the truth. With 80,000 employees and a $1.8 trillion budget, RFK Jr. needs to get in position and start delivering news. And he needs to put out a daily or a weekly kind of a press briefing or whatever you want to call it, an update. All the departments need to do that. I want to see one from Kash Patel. I want to see one from RFK Jr. I want to see one from Pam Bondi. I want to see one from, what's her name in charge of the education department? I can't remember her name. She's that star wrestler or whatever person. Okay, she's supposed to basically work herself out of a job. I want to see updates on all that stuff, but I see nothing. There's just a dearth of information. And it's a concern, but 76% love what Donald Trump had to say in his speech on Tuesday night. And the Democrats don't know what to do with themselves, which brings up the question. Bill O'Reilly, former Fox host, told NewsNation host Chris Cuomo that he thinks Democrats are on the brink of collapse due to their hostility towards President Donald Trump. Daily Caller with this news. Now, is the Democrat Party on the verge of collapse? What do you say to that idea, Dr. Bradley?
It's interesting, and I mentioned the last hour the rebuttal that the Michigan senator gave, and I think this is something that's related to the challenge they face right now. What I perceive this young woman is, I got kids older than her. Here she is, the junior senator from Michigan, and so I call her a young woman, and that's not derogatory in any means. She is a young person, relatively speaking. But at any rate, I think what the Democrats are doing right now is they're trying somebody on the big stage, if you will. They did the same thing with Tracy Abrams. You remember when she blew up her chance to do something like that with her socialistic perspective. But they're looking for a new banner carrier, I think, and they got to look to a new generation.
By the way, just so you
know,
Alyssa Slotkin, American politician born 1776. So she's patriotic there, Doctor.
1776?
No,
she was born in 1976.
That's right.
She was born on the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration. Right. But that doesn't put in her DNA the things that really matter. And honestly, a lot of the things she said in her little 10-minute rebuttal were an introductory thing for herself. And I think that was by design. I think that the Democrat Party, they absolutely, why didn't they go with Kamala? Well, that should be anything that anybody that's been around for the last 4 years. But Kamala ran in the 2020 primary thing that they had the debates and everything. She was eliminated almost instantly. Anybody with more than 2 brain cells to rub together could say this woman, with her cackling and her word salads and all that kind of stuff, just she wasn't, she didn't fit the role. Okay, so they eliminated her. Then Biden picks her. And the 25th Amendment should have been imposed upon the presidency, but they took a look and they said, "Holy Hannah, look who's on deck," and they couldn't do it. Then they ran her for president. Well, I think that this gal that spoke, this Senator Slotkin, she gave the most cogent Democrat speech that I've heard in at least 4 years, maybe 6. And that's not saying much, though, because her every single aspect of that was choreographed and was completely polished. This was every single word was set and polished in a setting, every single toss of her head and gesture of her hands and all that kind of stuff. It was so choreographed. They're looking for some traction somewhere. I don't think they found it with her. I mean, if you couldn't see through what she was saying, and then if you went and did any research on what she stands for, she's for, the Obamacare and gun control and socialized everything, she's a rabid Zionist. I mean, all of these kinds of things, and you can see why she got in her job the way she did. I've run for Senate a couple of times and didn't gain any traction, but I'm not a rabid Zionist. And in fact, quite the opposite. But the fact of the matter is, she has all of the ticket punching that she needs to look good to the woke crowd of the Democrats, and she had a way of articulating enough stuff that sounded like Trump might even agree with some of it. Our good American security.
Yeah, what you're going to see is you're going to see a greater role from her. That was her, hey, here's your debut on a bigger stage. Let's see how you do. And she did very well in many, many ways. Now, I'm not agreeing with everything she did or said, but I'm saying, hey, it went off very well. I don't think the Democrats are on the ropes as much as people think. And the reason I say that is, yeah, they've fallen out of favor to a great degree. But as long as you have billions of dollars rolling your way, you'll never be out of the game, Doctor.
You can spin the narrative with the right public relations program. You can make a narrative, and that's what they were doing with this senator. But Cuomo, I don't know if you've ever listened to him. I mean, it's a really difficult thing to stomach, even when Bill O'Reilly was on recently. I mean, the man is a chameleon in so many ways that it is just... I have to turn the TV
I get
off.
it. I understand. So how many Republicans do you think are secret Democrats or so middle that, and that's kind of another thing that we've got to understand. I believe the Republican Party has been extremely infiltrated by the Democratic Party.
Well, if you consider just in Utah, I mean, our legislature, our executive branch, I mean, that is saturated. There are a few very rare exceptions to that. But basically, you look at Orrin Hatch. He was a Democrat before he came to Utah and became a Republican. You look at Mitt Romney. I mean, here's a guy that he was governor of Massachusetts. Do Republicans get elected governor of Massachusetts? The answer is no. But he was. How did he do that? He flip-flopped and chameleoned it to the point that he bamboozled the people and become governor of Massachusetts. So this kind of stuff is going on. And Tragedy and Hope, remember that book? The idea was, let's blend the parties to the point that the false alternative you get by throwing the bums out of the office, you get the new bums in the office that are on the same agenda. This has been going on for 100 years. It literally has, since the foundation of the Council of Foreign Relations, and rolling forward with all of the deep state and the United Nations and blah, blah, blah. All of this stuff is going completely according to plan. And if you read the book, Tragedy and Hope, there's a good book report out that's a much easier read. It's a much shorter one. It's called The Naked Capitalist by Cleon Skousen, where it does a book report on tragedy and hope. I mean, people can read that in an afternoon if they wanted to. And you can see how the blending of the parties is happening. And the
naked communist and the naked capitalist are so close together, it's not even funny.
Well, the naked communist came out first, and then Cleon got a hold of this. Cleon was a friend of ours. Of course, he's long since dead. But
sure.
But at any rate, he gets this Tragedy and Hope book. And by the way, Bill Clinton was mentored by the author of that book. I mean, Bill Clinton, the globalist perspective, absolutely came with that all of that baggage, if you will, of globalism. And we see where Bill Clinton has taken the country as best he could along the way. And I mean, we've gutted our military readiness since his administration. It's a disaster. And you're right. Most, I'm not going to say all, that's a little bit too inclusive, but most of those that claim to be Republicans are virtually, just by slight shades of difference, Democrats. And you watch what's going on, and you have to say, how are they all doing the same thing regardless of who's in office? It's because that's their marching orders. They're bought off by Big Pharma, the military-industrial complex, the Zionist movement, and they're not really interested at all in upholding their oath of office. It's a tragedy. And the tragedy and hope was that the tragedy was that they want to keep it secret. The hope is that it's going to prevail. That's the premise of the book, Tragedy and Hope. It's like 1,500 pages. It's a huge book. So anyway, I did Lou have a message? I feel a little bad. We might have hijacked his message. Was there anything we should?
He just jumped on just to participate with us.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to highlight his show on the weekends and get more listeners and promote that a little bit. And so hang tight. Liberty Roundtable Live.
A battle between truth and deceit. A battle between forces that would enslave this country. And between a media that wants to present you with the truth. We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in fact.
TheEpochTimes.com.
Looking for an IT partner that truly understands your needs? Managed IT Services is the answer. We meet with you regularly to discuss your goals and form a tailored technology plan. Our customers have called us a trusted advisor who delivers. When it comes to IT, we do it all. Firewalls, cloud storage, server migration, and more. Say goodbye to long-term contracts and hello to a team that earns your business month after month. Call 801-706-6980 now and let Managed IT Services transform your IT experience.
Have you ever had great honey? No, I mean really good, all-natural, raw honey? Well, now you can, thanks to localhoneyman.com. We can ship out our locally made honey all across the U.S. So don't worry, you won't miss out. Plus, Local Honeyman has so many different flavors, like Utah Wildflower, High Desert Delight, Happy Valley, and Blackberry, just to name a few. So purchase your delicious raw honey today at localhoneyman.com.
Do you treasure your liberty? Well, at lovingliberty.net, we most certainly do. And we want to help protect your liberty too. Become part of the family. Everyone knows that the core of any society is the family. Therefore, the government should foster and protect the integrity of its family, we the people. Won't you join us as a Loving Liberty sponsor to help us promote the principles in the 5,000-year leap? Let's restore the miracle that changed the world at lovingliberty.net.
All right, back with you live. So do you think that the Republican Party's on the ropes, Doctor? Or the Democratic Party, I'm sorry, is on the ropes, like Bill O'Reilly says, and, you know?
Well, I think it's a bit
collapse?
of it's an overstatement, and I think it's he's smoking a little bit of hopium, you know. The problem is that when things like that get said, I really believe that there's it's kind of like, okay, this guy's got a real horrible right hook, so I don't need to worry about that. Okay, so you quit, your posture, your defensives, your mindset, you quit watching for a right hook. Well, it's pretty easy to give a right hook on somebody that's got their guard down, and so I think there's some danger in the way that this is being touted. I think that they're trying to find their footing, though. I mean, I really do believe their whole narrative in the just past election was so whacked out. I mean, their identity politics and everything else like that they played, with the cackling word salad being their banner carrier. All of that stuff put them in a really bad.
I agree with that 100%. I'm just telling you, though, I mean, it's kind of like saying IBM's going to melt down. It was big once. It's not as big as it once was, but, man, it's so behemoth it's not going away anytime soon. Same thing's true for the Democratic Party. As long as they continue to have big billionaire supporters and stuff, they're not going away anytime soon at all, folks, okay? So they're not on the verge of collapse at all, in my opinion. Bill O'Reilly's, I don't know, he's smoking hopium or something. It's just not true. Now, have they got a lot to re-strategize about and refocus about and everything else? Yes. Will they find their footing? Yes. In 4, 8, 12, 16 years, will we have one of these clowns at the helm? Probably so. And that's the concern. But here's the deal. Even Tulsi Gabbard now, she was asked, and she says, hey, the CIA swamp, is deeper than expected. YourNews.com with that piece. Your News doing a good job as a news service. But even Tulsi's going, man, the swamp's deeper than I thought it was. Trump found that out first go round, and I'm telling you, they haven't even begun to scratch the surface of how deep the swamp is. It's about to swamp all of them if they're not very careful.
Well, Gabbard's right. I mean, this is a well-entrenched. And for most people,
yes.
People don't understand that in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, a year, you cannot completely drain a swamp. Let's think about draining the swamp.
Well, let's talk about how long it took to fill the swamp up first, right?
Absolutely. There's a big issue to do. By the way, didn't Gabbard come up with about 100 intelligence people that need to be fired because they're sexting or their sexual communication on their NSA-provided network? I mean, this is like, are you kidding me? We're using secured communications to have intimate discussions. I mean, I'm trying to be as delicate as I can on this.
Yeah,
whole thing.
Basically they say it was a drink, alcohol, sex fest deal, and she's going, this is clown show and needs to be stopped. And she's spot on right. And I'm not downing her for saying the swamp's deeper than she thought. I think all of us are in for a rude awakening of how deep and abusive it really is. Think about everything Trump is trying to dismantle. Every time you turn around, a judge says no. Every time you turn around, someone says that's against the law. You can't fire this person. You can't shrink government. You can't not spend money. You can't. I mean, they've got this stuff so wrapped around the axle, full of manipulations to protect their deep state unconstitutional authority that it's not even funny. Well, and so your point is you got to work your way through that, right?
You do, but you hit on something, and I hate to distract your thought process, but there's so many spin doctors out there that let's just take this Supreme Court ruling about the USAID funding. Most are spinning that in a program that says Trump has been shut down. There ain't going to be no more problem with getting our USAID out. That's not correct. What the Supreme Court decision said was, and this is based upon a lawsuit that was brought by contractors that had already performed labor. They had work in progress. They had paychecks that were due because they were fulfilling a contract they had done. The Supreme Court says this work that's been done has to be paid. Now, the way a lot of the lame-brain mainstream media is spinning that is, oh, look at that. Oh, they shut Trump down. No, they didn't. The bottom line was, okay, Sam, let's say you had a contract with a business and you had delivered some deliverable that you needed to do about some tech plan or some whatever, and now they say they're not paying you. Well, you deserve to be paid, and that's what the Supreme Court said. This was not a huge defeat that means that Trump's been poured back in his bottle about how he's going to handle it. But
if you look at the mainstream press, hey, Trump got beat and shut down at every turn, buddy. He's just done. I mean, he might as well just go ahead and resign now. See, that's the narrative these liars are putting together. Absolutely. So Tulsi Gabbard fires more than 100 intelligence officers over messages in a chat board, I guess. The discussions went beyond work to, quote, sexual themes and political messages. I mean, this is NBC telling you this. Well, so here's what I mean. Once in a while, something leaks out, but hey, how come everybody else hasn't seen that?
Well, Tulsi Gabbard gave this story herself. I mean, she was telling the story. That it should have been told. But here's the deal. I believe that it's deeper than that. I believe that what was really there was a DEI-type movement within this secure agency that was trying to promote the idea of made-up sexual status, the ABCD, WXYZ, LGBTQ stuff. And the fact of the matter is that I think it was probably being done purposely and with the concurrence and support of the Biden administration under their reign, okay? So this was not just a bunch of people, I don't think, and we won't know this until we do further investigation, but I don't believe that these people just went off and had their little sex chats without saying, oh yeah, this is condoned by our management, and I think the management was at fault.
Yeah, and what you've got to do is you've got to have some people investigate and turn over all, and get the answers and drill into it and do it. The problem is there's so many examples like that it's just, I don't even know how you get started.
it's no time like this present.
Oh,
let's
you're
just
right.
start.
I agree. So I appreciate Tulsi firing those people. I appreciate her bringing this to the table and exposing it. I appreciate her doing a good job. She says the CIA swamped deeper than expected, big time. Then she fires more than 100 intelligence officers because they're literally on the public dime discussing perverted sex topics in this chat forum and everything else. It's insanity. And that's just one teeny slice of what we're talking about, right?
Oh, absolutely. The swamp is deep and wide. There's no question about it. And I think that we've talked about it before where Trump got swamped. I mean, he really literally did.
And
his
he's getting
first
swamped
administration.
now, too.
Yeah, I agree with you, but
I'm not saying he's not doing a lot of good the best he can, but the problem that I see is Trump's out there all by himself. Congress isn't backing Trump and codifying anything that he's doing or clarifying. The courts are literally pushing back, and Congress, what has Congress even done in the last 60 days? Doctor, do you even know?
Well, as you pointed out, they censured one of their guys. I mean, did you see his rant after he got censured?
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
crazy.
Come on, people. Really, literally, truthfully, these guys are distracted. They're not doing their job. Their job is to come up with a budget. Okay, I mean that's a big part of their job. They don't have time for that.
They got to censor Green. Now, I'm not defending Green, but kick the clown out with a T because he's out of control. Fine. Violate Robert's Rules of Order, whatever you want to call it. You're out of there. Fine. But why waste time censoring that guy? Why spend 435 members of the House, minus him or whatever else, to deal with that issue and spend time on it? For real? What for?
Yeah. Well, the guy
I mean,
was
what's
out of
worse, to
control
do what Al
too.
Green did and get kicked out at the start for babbling his mouth, or to sit there the whole time and just be as rude as they were the whole time? You ought to censure all of them then.
Yeah, it was a clown
It's a waste
show,
of time.
as you so
It's a
often
disaster.
bring up. There's no question. There's no question.
So we don't have time to look into Tulsi Gabbard's firing of these 100 intelligence officers. These aren't just like your average Joe, hey, we work in the food line and we talked about sex and we shouldn't have. These are intelligence officers, Doctor.
Well, and that brings up another topic, which we've touched on before, and it has to do with the fact that when I got my first security clearance, I was 18 years old. And in those days, there was some hoops you had to jump through, okay? And they did a real thorough, let's dig in on this guy. If you were overly in debt, if you had promiscuity in your life, if you had an alcohol problem, if you had been arrested for speeding, I mean, anything, that came out in the investigation.
Yeah, oftentimes they'd even interview your neighbors to see what kind of real life you led, all that kind of stuff, right?
There's no question they did that kind of stuff. And what kind of characters this guy got? Well, if you had a promiscuity problem, too many girlfriends, or too many boyfriends if you were a guy, or whatever, that was an elimination factor. I mean, there were too many weaknesses there that could be played upon by somebody that wanted to somehow take advantage of you and say, okay, look, why don't you play along with us? They wouldn't even have to give you money. We're just not going to expose your private sex life, okay? And people went along, and I mean, but that's why they had those kind of vetting processes. Today, anybody, it seems, can get one, and especially maybe if you're heavily involved in stuff you ought not be involved in. And they don't care. They just rubber stamp and send it on, apparently.
Well, a big old shout out to Tulsi Gabbard doing a good job. She says the CIA swamped deeper than even she could imagine. I think that's a message for the rest of us to pay attention to. And she fires more than 100 intelligence officers for their perversion. We need to dig into that and find out, was it sanctioned by the administration? I bet Dr. Bradley's right. When we get back, I want to talk about podcast genres. I know it sounds like a simple topic, but we'll dig in. You'll see. How about most popular to least popular? Do you know what they are? What does America believe is important? I'll tell you in seconds on your radio.
Your daily Liberty News Wire. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. President Trump's appeal to Iran Let's make a deal.
The president wrote to Iran's Ayatollah Khomeini seeking to negotiate a nuclear deal. He told Fox Business News that he hopes an agreement can be reached because if the U.S. has to take military action, it's going to be a terrible thing for Iran. The president said something's going to happen one way or the other, and now is the time to negotiate. Greg Clugston, Washington.
The president says he is strongly considering sanctions and tariffs on Russia in hopes of forcing a settlement of the war in Ukraine. Signs that Europe may be ready to look after its own defense needs instead of relying so much on the U.S.
Leaders in Brussels last night made EU history, agreeing to hike defense spending dramatically. That decision came after the U.S. president withdrew military and intelligence support for Ukraine and said he didn't see why the U.S. should protect NATO allies that don't meet security spending targets. Spain long languished in defense spending doldrums and suddenly changed its tune, while traditionally debt-allergic Germany is now encouraging Europe's government to dig deep in their pockets to future-proof continental security. Next week, France's President Macron is expected to host army chiefs from across Europe, whose countries are ready to guarantee future peace in Ukraine.
The BBC's Katja Adler. The Department of Homeland Security ending a collective bargaining agreement with the tens of thousands of frontline employees at the TSA. The department says the agreement is hindering the ability of the organization to safeguard our transportation systems and keep Americans safe. American employers added 151,000 jobs last month. The Labor Department says healthcare, financial services, transportation led the way in hiring. The unemployment rate ticked up a notch, 4.1%. More on these stories, townhall.com.
3 years ago, I wrapped up a run of Annie playing Daddy Warbucks with the South Carolina Children's Theater. I was about 50 pounds overweight, tired, sick, fed up with the way I felt. Hi, it's Mike Gallagher. I had to do something. I scheduled my weight loss consultation with PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. And as they say, the rest is history. Just a few months, I lost over 50 pounds. I took control of my health. 3 years later, I've kept the weight off and I feel better than ever. If you are where I was, do what I did. Call PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. It'll change your life. It's fast, it's simple. They won't let you fail. Just give them a call at 855-696-2020 to schedule your weight loss consultation. That's 855-696-2020. 855-696-2020. Here's the best part. First 11 callers who mention the keyword healthy will get 2 free weeks added to their weight loss package. Don't wait. Call today. 855-696-2020. Mention healthy to get 2 free weeks. Or visit them at myphdweightloss.com. myphdweightloss.com.
Why don't we say to the government writ large that they have to spend a little bit less? Anybody ever had less money this year than you had last? Anybody ever having a 1% pay cut? You deal with it. That's what government needs, a 1% pay cut. If you take a 1% pay cut across the board, you have more than enough money to actually pay for the disaster relief. But nobody's going to do that because they're fiscally irresponsible. Who are they? Republicans. Who are they? Democrats. Who are they? Virtually the whole body is careless and reckless with your money. So the money will not be offset by cuts anywhere. The money will be added to the debt, and there will be a day of reckoning. What's the day of reckoning? The day of reckoning may well be the collapse of the stock market. The day of reckoning may be the collapse of the dollar. When it comes, I can't tell you exactly, but I can tell you it has happened repeatedly in history when countries ruin their currency.
As you are aware, America is divided over every fault line possible. This is intentionally fostered by those who do not love God, family, or country. We believe a peaceful future as a free people absolutely depends on civility. Clarion Call for Civility is looking for funding and volunteers at every level to make our hopes and efforts a reality. Please donate, sign our pledge, and help us in our sacred cause. Please visit callforcivility.com for more details. Callforcivility.com.
Bypass the mainstream narrative with Liberty News Radio at libertynewsradio.com. Engage with charismatic hosts live or on demand. We cover the crucial news focused on God, family, and country. News that other networks simply refuse to use. Think of Eleanor's hard-hitting news and podcast at your fingertips, anytime, anywhere. Join us at libertynewsradio.com. Empower your day with the truth, because the truth will set you free. libertynewsradio.com. Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right, Dr. Scott Bradley, freedomsrisingsun.com, and Sam Bushman on your radio. So we're talking about all kinds of topics, and I'm basically saying, look, Congress is derelict in their duty. They're literally melting down. They could be codifying what President Trump is doing, and they should. Some of these department heads are doing a great job. Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, even Pam Bondi's doing a great job on a lot of things. RFK Jr., you don't hear a word about it. We've got to get the supply chain together when it comes to delivering factual, truth-telling information, etc. But, Congress and our government is merely a reflection of the people, ladies and gentlemen. So it's really our fault for the most part. As far as I can tell, the American people aren't really doubling down on what's important. Yeah, they're like 76% love what Donald had to say, but everybody kind of wants to just have somebody else do the job. So they kind of want a spectator sport and stuff like that. And so some want to debate that the Democratic Party's, going under. They're on the verge of collapse. Others are saying, hey, the swamp's deeper than we thought it was. Okay, all those facts are true. But at the end of the day, this is not a spectator sport. The Founding Fathers said you have a republic if you can keep it. And the problem is we're not able to keep it because we're not a moral people, first of all. So we got to turn to God Almighty and repent, first of all. Faith unto repentance, unto baptism and the Holy Ghost, and endure to the end. And okay, there's a lot of good. But here's the deal. Let's just look at the podcast genres. So podcast is as new media as it gets. Podcast genres from most to least popular in the country. And I find this interesting. Now, this order is not exact because it changes. Every other month, it's like a different one bubbles to the top or whatever. So I've got the top 10. Ignore the order because I don't know if the order's accurate, meaning it changes all the time. But the first one is true crime. This genre remains consistently popular with everybody interested. What do you think? Are you listening to True Crime Podcast, Doctor?
No, I'm very ignorant about what to do because.
Out, buddy.
No, I guess it must be, but I guess those true crime magazines from the 50s that you might have seen, maybe you didn't
modern
see
versions, my friend.
But it's continued with podcasts, I guess.
Well, and my response to that is, so we want to just basically spend our time involved in analyzing and listening to and the details about crime. Wow. In a God-fearing society where people obey the Ten Commandments, we wouldn't have much crime you wouldn't be able to do true crime broadcasts at all if we had a good, honest, moral society, Doctor.
It's a kind of a voyeuristic kind of thing, It is.
I
want to see the ugliness and whatever it is.
And that's the point. We want to focus on the crime is like a bad thing, right? So you're just spending your time focusing on the bad things of society, dissecting it, digging into it, whatever else. All right, so that's true crime. The next one is news. Current events drive significant listenership, especially during major political or social events. Now, that's the kind of realm that we're in. But as I mentioned last hour, hey, all you're hearing from the news is the clown show, dishonest manipulation. RFK's a bad guy. Everybody hates him. Da-da-da. Tulsi's crazy. She's goofy. And they go on and on and on and on. That's all we're really hearing in the news. Unless you know to seek out the new media taking center stage, real news like we're talking about. For the most part, everybody involved in true crime and news is being duped, Doctor.
I would say very likely, and in fact, that's been going on since the 1920s, I think, when basically the news media sources of the day were bought up by a conglomerate that basically wanted to set the agenda. And I talked about this before on your show about how my dad didn't believe it was real unless Walter Cronkite told him on the 6 o'clock news back in the 60s that that's the way it is. September 17th, 1963, whatever. You just, this news media, and Cronkite, of course, was such a worm, I guess I should say. I denigrate worms when it came to promoting the globalist agenda. But he had the credibility and the presence, and so, a lot of people get sucked in on that, and they're doing it the same way today. The problem is that not nearly enough really analysis is being done in our own intelligence. We're just kind of accepting what's presented to us. And whether it's that Chris Cuomo guy or whether it's a CNN kind of program. Honestly, there's huge agendas that are being promoted on the people, and we're being sucked in, unfortunately.
There's no question about it. Anyway, you got to laugh at the next one, Doctor. Don't even get a laugh. Come on now.
I'm listening.
Yeah. Comedy. Comedy's number 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't you think? I mean, don't you listen to comedy podcasts, Doctor? Come on.
I haven't done too much of that, I got to admit.
You got to get on that, man. You're not even in the realm of what Americans are paying attention to, see?
Right.
So I just find that fascinating, right? Now listen. So you got true crime, news, comedy, and then they say society and culture. You want to talk about society and culture? So we're going to just have a discussion about the GLBT, whatever the heck it is. What is it? LGBTQR plus A through Z. What is it, right?
XYZ.
Okay. Are people talking about, listen carefully to me, are people talking about society and culture in a way that's productive or that's valuable? Like, what culture discussions are there? I think there's a few good Christian groups like Salem and many others talking about good Christian values. But for the most part, when you start talking about society and culture, in my opinion, you're talking about, for the most part, everything that we stand against. It's like anti-family. Dad's a buffoon. Mom just turned into a lesbian, whatever, this stuff. It's not real honest discussion about society and culture or standing up for Christian values in the culture war. It's not that, unfortunately. All right, you ready for the next one? You're going to love this one. Sports. Yeah, with dedicated followings, especially during peak seasons or major events, sports podcasts are super popular, right? Next one, business.
Yeah, I see that's probably one too.
Yeah. Many listeners turn to business podcasts for insights into entrepreneurship, economics, and market trends. Okay, I can see that, and I can see some value in that. But are we talking about small business in that? Are we talking about are we just talking about big corporations abusing everybody? Hard to tell, but there you go. So you got business. Next one, health and wellness. This is my point. So we're talking about health and wellness, but increasing interest in health and wellness and lifestyle changes made this an incredible category. Well, how much truth are you getting on that if we're just going to attack Bobby Kennedy all day long over it? You're not going to get a whole lot of truth as far as I can see. Next one, education. Hey, are we going to abolish the education department? Do you think they'll get that done, Doctor?
Boy, I'll tell you, it's gone a lot farther than I anticipated initially. I mean, I'm getting hopeful maybe a little bit, but still the proof's going to be in the pudding. But I think it's not going to happen. It's too entrenched, and what happens is they always do the oh ain't it awfuls. What about the kids that can't read in Los Angeles? Well, just tell me one little. Just truthfully help me understand how the Department of Education at the national level is helping some kid in Watts learn how to read. It just isn't happening. There is nothing, but they're going to say, oh, if we don't have that support system, our kids are all going to suffer. And so they're going to play that, and so I consequently don't believe that they'll be able to pull this off. But, man, it's farther along than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, like I say, I think they'll get rid of the education department. I just think they'll move the key functions into worse departments if we're not very careful indeed. And they'll carry them forward in a more hostile, abusive way if we're not very careful. All right, most popular to least popular, true crime, news, comedy, society and culture, sports, business, health and wellness, education. The next one is technology. So I'm involved in two big ones, news and technology. Technology show called Tech Watch Radio. We keep an eye on tech so you don't have to. Available at npitechguys.com. Check that out. Then the next one is called self-improvement, Doctor. And that's the last one of the 10 here. Self-improvement. And you got to kind of ask yourself, hey, you think there's a lot of good conservative podcasts on self-improvement? Or do you think it's, all these clown show hey, let's talk about, I don't know, transgender mice or something. You think these podcasts are going to be focused on principles like God, family, and country and stuff like that?
Oh, I think it's probably the woke agenda on most of those kinds of things.
Because if you want to do self-improvement, what you need to do is focus on God, family, and country, Doctor.
It would seem so. I think that's a pretty baseline to follow.
Go ahead and skip the break, Liz. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Doctor.
No, I think that if you look at the true, the sources of light, and knowledge, and happiness, and principle and everything like that, I think we've got to do more than this woke agenda that we're being steered into. And I think the education system does that largely. I'm a little bit surprised that health and well-being is not at a higher level. I mean, look at all of the weight loss programs that are out there.
So keep in mind this order changes all the time. So it's possible that, I just picked the top 10 because they slide around so much. So it could be that was number 3, Right now, they say comedy is at the top of the list to be factual, right?
Okay. Well, anyway, I you know what? If this is what America's doing, I either got to broaden my horizon or I got to make sure I don't get disconnected from the really important stuff. I mean, because it sounds like there's an awful lot of diversion from things that, literally should take a lot more of our attention if we're going to improve ourselves.
Yeah, what shocks me is that religion is not in the mix. I think we ought to talk about religious topics and talk about, Christian principles and talk about the reality check. There's studies everywhere under the sun that highlight the more you have, monogamy in your marriage, faithfulness, the more you have mother and father taking care of one another with complete fidelity, taking care of their children. So again, I think religion and family, God, family, country, it's surprising to me that a lot of that's not really in the mix. The other thing that surprises me is not in the mix, Doctor, is preparedness.
That's true. That has not
why
been
the heck
touched
not?
on.
Everybody knows we need to prepare, right?
Well, no, anyway, apparently not.
You're right. You're exactly right. And that's, to me, a big concern in America, too. We've got all kinds of natural disasters, and people are losing their jobs, and all kinds of reasons to want to prepare and want to work together and everything else. So anyway, that I find interesting. Now I want to move to Trump's speech again, because he said some great things in his speech. A couple of them that I want to highlight and isolate and get your take on, Dr. Bradley. Here's the first one. Trump tells American children, you are perfect, exactly the way God made you. Your thoughts, Doctor?
Well, my gut feeling, initial thought is that's kind of like the participation trophies that we give everybody. I concur the idea is that we're God's children and we're on a journey and all that kind of stuff, okay? So I don't want to completely smother that whole concept, but most of us are very imperfect souls. And if we think we're the gift of the world, we got another thing coming. There's an old adage that if you think you're the enlightened one, you're not. I mean, and that's kind of the problem we're in, is that everybody's so, like they say, they get a participation trophy for breathing. It's kind of like, hey, every day's a gift then, I guess. But I don't know. I think that contextually, I think we need to recognize that growth and progression is part of life. And if we already think we're perfect, we're going to probably not put as much energy into that.
And I agree with both sides of that. It depends on what you're looking at. I agree. None of us are perfect. The only one that was perfect that lived is the Savior, Jesus Christ.
Right.
And so none of us are perfect. You're right. And we can't we can't get too big of a head, even if it's truthful. And we certainly can't get too big of a head based on a lie. Right. And so that's one side of the coin that I think you're right about. When I think he says, hey, you're perfect just the way God made you, it is pointing to God Almighty. It is pointing to that God created us. And he further then said, hey, and there are only two genders, male and female. And so all I'm saying is when you take it in that sense, hey, we are made just the way God made us, which is imperfect, which is we got to have faith and repent. We got to do those things. And so I see both sides of it, but I'm just saying when you have a president that says, hey, you're great the way God made you, and there are two genders, I know that sounds like such a basic fundamental truth. Why are we even discussing it? But we haven't seen that kind of candid truth-telling from the Oval Office for years, Doctor.
No, that's true. The thing is that I don't know. I see so many people that are arrogant and they have no justifiable reason for being that.
Well, there's no question.
And so to kind of foster that idea that we're all, exactly the way we should be. You know what? Most of us are flawed people, and we gotta try and pick it up and go from there.
Oh, yeah.
But
the
I
acknowledgement
see,
of God's at the helm and that God created us and that there's two genders. And I think that was his general point, and I agree. And I agree we got to always guard against, thinking we're rock stars when we're not. I mean, a humble delivery is always the better route to go, a kind word, realizing that, we're no better than anybody else. I mean, your points are well taken. But I guess I'm just saying, hey, how could Donald frame what he's saying about two genders and when they're, saying all these kids, hey, you're in the wrong body and you're this and that. And, he was trying to address that reality check. And I find it refreshing that his least candid is, hey, you are perfect, exactly the way God made you. And I don't think that he means that they were perfect beings as much as I think he's trying to stop this idea that, oh my gosh, you're just in the wrong body, or oh my gosh, you're just, he's really doubling down on that and pointing to God. And I think it's refreshing.
Yeah. The context of that is really important. So I'm glad you brought that additional, context.
Yeah. When you start saying there's only two genders, people, God made it that way. That's just the way it is. And so you people that are born in your body, understand God made you that way, and it's okay to be like God made you. And that's the same thing with the race discussion. I'm proud that I'm white. Not that I think anybody else shouldn't be proud of their culture. They should too. Black people should be proud they're black, and we should all be proud the way God made us. Then we should realize we're far from perfect, and that's why the Savior's there, and we need to have faith under repentance and follow Christ. I mean, that's really the message of, in my mind, that's critically important in this life, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we've got to keep ourselves in, I think, the reality zone. I guess that's what I would say. A lot of people leave the reality.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we got these critters, fuzzy animal belief systems, so they believe they're a cat or something. Keep yourself grounded in reality and go forward and succeed with the purposes you were sent here for.
And I think that's really the point Donald was making, if you kind of study the context and everything else. House Speaker Mike Johnson's chief of staff, guy's name is Hayden Haynes, got a DUI. When asked whether he, meaning Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, was going to stand by his chief of staff, he said, absolutely, I am. I've known this guy forever. He's trusted, he's respected, he has my full faith and confidence. There you have it, Doctor. What do you say to that?
Well, again, we're all imperfect beings that have got a process we ought to be going through. But the fact of the matter is that do you think that DUI affects his ability to do his job, and all that kind of stuff? But I appreciate the loyalty of Mike. But, we have a lot of people that are in high office that are probably impaired most of the time that they're even operating. And I think we, the people, need to look at that and get that corrected as quickly as we can, because rarely when people were flying off the handle like this green guy that got censored, holy cow, what's your impairment process there,
Well, he said he'd do it again. He was proud of it. He's all over it. He's ready to go. Do it again.
Yeah, I guess.
But there you have it. All right. I guess the D.C. Police Department finally agrees to release January 6th body cam video for a price. Western Journal with this piece. When Judicial Watch filed a, quote, public records request for local police footage of the January 6th issue, they were told that it would cost $1.6 million to get that. Judicial Watch has filed all kinds of lawsuits. $30 million wrongful death lawsuit regarding Ashley Babbitt. The trial date is set for July the 20th. Judicial Watch has also sued the DOJ for all of its FBI files on Ashley Babbitt. They also sued the CIA for all records related to any shots fired inside the Capitol building, as well as records relating to bomb detecting dogs and everything else placed in January 6th venues. Anyway, there you have that. I thought I'd brief you on all that stuff. So, where were all the 40,000 hours we were promised we were going to get released? Well, a couple of them went through Tucker Carlson, and then the whole project got shut down, and now they got to pay $1.6 million to get a little bit of body cam footage, Doctor.
No, I think that one will ultimately be resolved. I mean, the idea of putting too steep a price on something to obtain what should be available through a freedom of information thing, I think ultimately and finally will be resolved. I think I've seen this way too much in our home state, where the lieutenant governor's office or a county office or something like that is attempting to prevent information from being shared. There should be public information, and they want to charge you some stupid fee like $150 a copy to go pull information. It's like, okay, so one sheet of paper is going to cost me $150. Well, we got a lot of research time and everything. This is something that comes with the job.
Yeah,
if you're
so
in
hopefully
a
we'll
public
get
setting,
truth on it. But man, they've had to file lawsuits and everything else even to get as far as they've got is the problem. Two quick stories before the end of the hour. You got to talk quick. First one: Utah Senator Mike Lee and Kentucky Representative Thomas Massie will reintroduce legislation to abolish the Federal Reserve. The bill is the Federal Reserve, Abolition Act or whatever else, and I commend them for that. What do you say, Doctor?
Good on them. Let's see it happen.
It's the Federal Reserve Board Abolition Act. It will dissolve the board that the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. So I say bring it on. Shut it down ASAP. That's great news.
Let's do a full audit. Let's offend everybody in the nation about this imposition that's been put on us for the last 100 and almost 11, 12 years. Let's move forward. Let's do it.
Anyway, I think it's really good news. Last story. China says it's ready for, quote, any type of war with the U.S. BBC.com. What do you say to that, Doctor?
I think they're more ready than we are. I think that if you looked at a full-scale, traditional kind of big theater war, I think our pants are down and we're struggling to get across the street. And I think this has been something that we've been working on with all these regional conflicts we've got. I think we've drained our resources. I'll tell you something. Yesterday, I went to the State Department and I reviewed, and anybody can do this. I didn't go there personally. I went online. I looked at every single stinking piece of equipment that we have sent to Ukraine. I didn't even know we got anybody home that can drive a vehicle anymore. I mean, our armored vehicles, our weaponry, our surface-to-air missiles, our radar systems, not just small arms and millions of rounds of ammunition and 155-millimeter artillery stuff. We've got every kind of armament that you can imagine. It really, literally could have been used in World War III, and we could have been done with it. And we sent that to Ukraine. I go look at it. State Department has a list there of everything that's been sent. And we have drained our resources, and we're kind of on the ropes, I think. And if you think about it, if you had a war with China right now, it's a 7,000-mile supply chain, and we don't even have the products manufactured. We couldn't get it there on a bet. Yeah, we're not ready, baby.
I agree with that when they say they're ready for any kind of war. I mean, they've also threatened the nuclear option. A lot of people are saying it only relates to finance. I think it's starting to relate to everything, people. It's disaster, right?
It is.
Anyway,
it's a disaster.
I'm very concerned about it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not comfortable with this at all. Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Bradley. We'll talk soon.
All right, you guys all hang in there, and hopefully next week we'll be on the air again.
freedomsrisingsun.com is his website. Check out his weekly webinars and more. I'm Sam Bushman, syndicated by the Loving Liberty Radio Network, lovingliberty.net. God save the Republic.